On that note, who else have been told not to talk about money in the audience? Show of hands. Is it an impolite topic to be talking about? Okay, not too many, so not too bad. So I've always been told when I want to discuss or ask for advice about money to not talk about money. And I had this conversation with a founder who is extremely successful, and I said, do you have this issue? And she said, yeah, women generally don't talk about money. You bring a bunch of ladies together, your friends, and money is a very uncomfortable conversation. You don't share numbers on your salaries, and therefore you can't compare notes to ask for what you really deserve. And that is why also we still see a gender pay gap. So on that note, it gives me pleasure to introduce my panelists actually, and I want each of them to actually start from the end by talking about their attitudes about money and how it was shaped and formed by their respective backgrounds and how that has informed the vocation that they've chosen today. So let's start with you, Joy.
All right. My name is Joy. I manage a team of client advisors or private bankers in UBS. I've been with UBS for the last 18 years. I literally gave my youth to the bank. But joining UBS is one of the best decisions I made in life, as the firm allows me to grow both professionally as well as holistically. Now, on the part of the money, now when you go and see a client, when you go and see a prospect, one interesting lady tells me this: the doctor heals, the architect builds the house, the lawyer fights for my rights. What can you do for me as a banker? That set me thinking. I then replied, I can help preserve and grow your wealth. I can help to get you a house, a roof over your head. And through the years, I learned that whatever I do, I actually impact life. Hashtag impact for life.
Thank you. How do I follow that? I'm Tanya. I'm the co-founder of Sophia, a financial education platform based here in Singapore. And I did not have conversations with my parents or friends around money. It was a taboo subject. Growing up in the UK, it was very... it was not a polite subject, particularly for girls. So I didn't grow up thinking about money at all, actually. And I'm not really working in the money space because I have an obsession with money or greed or anything like that, but more because I want to see more women-led businesses in the world, and I want to see more equality generally, and I believe that we do that through financial education and economic empowerment of women. So Sophia provides financial education for women because I believe this is the foundation for any equality that we're striving for in the world.
Hi, I'm Khai. I'm the co-founder of Alta Group, formerly known as Funnel. We are a marketplace of alternative investment assets. So basically, you can come to our platform, buy and sell and trade security, such as SpaceX, Discord, VC funds, and so on and so forth. So it's out of all the asset allocation, I think more the riskier side of things. And that's actually why I started a company in this arena. It's about bringing access and liquidity within this space so that it's less risky. You can actually hold it for shorter period, bring more transparency, and allow more people, including women, to be more familiar with this asset class that's traditionally been warded off, or I guess less accessible to a lot of people. I mean, just to share a little bit of my personal journey with money. I'm one of those open and closed examples of women who manage money or work in the finance industry, but do not invest in their own money. In the start of my career, because I was working in investment banking in JP Morgan, and I barely sleep 4 hours a day, a night, or morning. And therefore, there was no time for me to actually get familiarized with investing, managing personal money. And the first thing I did after I left banking was to actually invest a large part of my savings into my own company. And the journey, I think I can share a little bit of my own journey in terms of how I get more comfortable, because I feel like each of us have their own personal relationship with money, and no one's the same. It's about getting comfortable with what you who you are as an identity and how you deal with money as your personal finance. Yeah.
Thank you very much, ladies. I would like to pose the first question to Tanya. Are there differences in relationships towards money between men and women? And are they narrowing with gender parity in access to education?
Boy, are there differences between men and women and our relationship with money, for sure. So I alluded to it earlier, but I think that our socialization around money as a young child is very different for girls and boys. And I think that that's probably where our differences start as children. I think parents and teachers are twice as likely to talk to their sons about money and business and tech than they are their daughters. So this is probably where it starts. Obviously, financial education in schools is lacking for all of us, for everyone, not just for girls, but for everyone in almost all countries. We're lacking financial literacy. So that's definitely playing a part. And I think what happens, or what I believe to happen for women and girls, is when we start to come out of our education, our formal education, and we start working, I think, to Kylie's point, is we're just not talking about money. And if I'm not talking with my girlfriends about money, we're all thinking that everyone else is better than us and they're doing something amazing with their money. And it's shameful that I don't know what to do with my money. But is it really shameful? Because if you haven't been taught something, how are you supposed to know? So I think a lot of us suffer from this shame and guilt, especially, to your point, Kylie, working in the finance world. You should know, this is like, I should know this. I should be able to. And the answer is that we don't. And a lot of the time we haven't had that education. We're not talking with our friends. Guys are talking with their friends. Hey, dude, have you seen this investment? Have you seen that? I've just made a ton of money. Oh, really? And off they go, and they're all doing it together, and they're chit-chatting about it, and it's exciting. And this is a guy's chat. Women are not doing that. I know that myself, if I try to talk for 1 minute about what I do in my day job, I see my friends going. So it's a tough conversation to have. So I avoid that conversation because obviously I still want to keep some friends. And so I think the gap, is it narrowing? Probably not. I think we're seeing a few more. We are seeing more women running funds, running, capital allocators, decision makers. They've still got very much smaller assets under management compared to men. So I think the amount of power that they hold, even if we have a bigger pool of investors, is smaller. In terms of individuals investing, as women, let's not forget that women have a gazillion things to do in one day. We are arranging the kids. We are running the house. We are organizing the childcare, the schooling, the school trip, the pocket money, everything. And we've got a day job. When do we have time to learn about investing? Because we're just so busy. We are busy, busy, busy. And the guys, obviously general statements here, guys have got a lot more time on their hands. They have some time to research, to investigate. And as women, we love to know everything about everything before we put $1 down. And if we haven't got time, then, we've also got to look amazing. We've got to do all these gazillion things and look amazing while we're doing it. So I think there's a huge gap. I think it's narrowing slowly. Education is key. Absolutely, education is key. Money dates with your friends, holding each other accountable. That's why I do what I do.
This is the first conference where I dare to wear sneakers. To your point, women still have to look good and, moderate.
It's exhausting.
Joy, you have an interesting story about money that you shared with me. So I'm not going to ask you the question. When I went to a luxury, I went to a DFS one day, and I really wanted this designer handbag. And I looked at it for a long time. It was 30% or 40% off the regular price. And I looked at it and I was like, I really want it. I can afford it. I don't need to buy an installment. But I went home and thought about it, and I decided to put the money into a stock.
Similar story in 2019, Michael has an opportunity to go to London for an exchange program. And I upped my credit card limit, thinking that I will go and buy a Hermes bag. It's every girl's dream, right, in 2019 to carry a Hermes bag. I walked into the store, I wasn't being served for 30 minutes. I waited, but nobody served me. They were too busy. So I walked out of the store, I walked down the streets, and my son said, "You sure, Mom, you don't want to just go back and try again?" Why not, since we're here? So I walked back to the store, and once again, the store is full. Nobody served me for 20 minutes. I walk out and I think to myself, it's such a buzzy place. Why don't I just buy 20 shares of Hermes in 2019? Euro 612, today is worth Euro 1,300. And that is a story I tell my girl, right? Sometimes you just look around you, things are interesting. Like Kylie was just sharing, she buy Amazon because she knows the company. She does research on the company. And that's how we women are like, right? You just buy the things that you're confident in and you just ride it through for the long time. That's my story, Sharon.
Thank you very much, Joy. I have something in common with Kalin, and that is I used to write about private equity. And that was way back in 2006 when there was two other private equity publications in the region. And there were very few women, and I had to learn about the asset class really quickly. And I can write about private equity. I know what to ask managers about private equity. I was in front of David Rubenstein, and he would ask me, which manager would you invest in? And yet, I gave my money to my father to invest in the Singapore stock market. Never mind how they're doing, you can speculate. Kylan, tell me, why are there so few women in the alternative asset class?
I think your question is more pertaining to people who are working in the investment management industry. I think for me, that's not specifically to investment. I think it applies across to a lot of industry across board, whether it's tech, finance, or generally even in Joy's line of work, because I come from banking, right? When I was working in JP Morgan, there were 0 MDs, women MDs in the Singapore office. But I do think that things have changed over time. I think a lot of it got to do with the historical context, right? Because young women like me do look up to basically people who are in leadership position. And we do see that when I grew up, there were not many. And also because of how the context is, there's less support for women. And we are, like what Tanya said, we have to do a lot. So there were not a lot of live examples as to how can women continue working in all this high-intensive industry, whether is it tech or specifically investment management. And therefore, hard for people to actually relate as to how do we juggle all this and then grow your career in this area. As a result, I think what we see is historically in the leadership position, especially in alternatives, right? Whether is it VC, even in today's one, Southeast Asia, there are very, very few GP. I think Virginia, who earlier moderated a panel, is one of the very few female GPs in this region. By context of what we're expected to do and the environment that we grew up with, right? Because we have to do so much and there are only 24 hours a day. But happy to say I think things have changed. From my own personal experience in the VC and PE world, we do see more and more people embracing diversity, which is very important when you want someone to manage your money. Because I think as an investment management perspective, you cannot engage in groupthink, right? So diversity is important, and I think that's the key things that we see have been changing in the industry. More women are being appointed as principal in the funds. GP, I think, will take longer. Again, these things change slowly over time. It'll be difficult for us to expect change overnight because we do need people who are experienced in this industry. And as a result of that, we need more people to stay in the career longer, to have the experience, right? So you'll start with more principals being appointed that are female, more diversity, whether it's women diversity or racial composition diversity or other form of diversity. And then going forward, will we then see diversity on even more senior position, whether is it GP and so on and so forth? Interestingly enough, I think when we first spoke about this topic, in the US, I think Sharon was sharing that capital allocators, we do see more women. I think because like capital allocation is more risk management, I think that's the main reason why in the Western developed country, we do see capital allocators have more women. Not that there are more women than men, because it's all relative, but there are generally more women in the position of capital allocation perspective. But I would say that these numbers are still far and few in between, based on especially in this part of the world. I think as we develop as a society and talk about this a bit more, things would change.
Yeah, I was sharing with Kylin in the group that I think CalPERS appointed a female CEO, and CPPIB has a woman in charge of private equity globally. And I think Future Fund has a lot of female in leadership positions as well in Australia, and that's the sovereign wealth, which is heartening to see, which we hope to see. But on the private investors end, right, higher net worth, Joy, do you see, men invest differently to women? Do you see an increase in women making more active decisions on investments? And what's the risk appetite like?
I have colleagues here from UBS. You could always reach out to them. They're seated at the last table. But from my experience, men generally are more financially confident, especially men in a senior role. You give them an idea, they take 5 minutes, and they decide on the decision. Women tends to be more receptive to your ideas, to your counsel, because when a man invests, they just stubbornly hold to that position, even though it's a loss-making position. They just live in hope that one day it will just go back up. So for the women, they tend to research, what they want to invest in. Even women in the senior positions, they do have a view. They already know in their mind what they want to do, but before they execute the trade, they still ask you, so Joy, is this right? Am I doing the right thing? So I guess it boils down to that financial confidence that women tends not to have. So I guess in 2017, UBS came out with a report on Own Your Worth. You could Google and check it out. It's Own Your Worth. We surveyed 3,700 women globally, married, widowed, divorced, over in US, UK, Hong Kong, Singapore, Brazil, Italy, just to name a few. And we realized that we all acknowledge that women tends to outlive the men. And yet, 77% or 72% of the women delegate that financial investment decision to their spouse. Only 8% make that joint decision together with their spouse. And 20% of the women actually handle that investment decision on their own. And you thought that this is only my generation, the older one, right? The next generation, the 20 to the 34 years old, they're all schooled, educated, we send them for tuition classes, they all go to university. They should be more independent, they should be making all the financial decisions on their own. And lo and behold, no. It's the same stats. They still rely on their partners, they still rely on the spouse. So I was honored to be the panel speakers in the UBS Straits Times inaugural Straits Times Youth Finance Academy, whereby we had 100 plus undergraduates coming into our office just to talk about how you manage your finance as you start your career. And in that forum, I advocate about owning your worth as early as 18 years old. And I encourage the men, the undergraduates there, to involve their partners, to involve their spouse as early as they could.
Tanya, you provide tools to help women to take control of money. Can you share some stats to share how much money women are controlling and potentially could put to work?
So women are 51% of the population. We are the majority population. Who knew, hey? We are 51% of the population, and we hold a third of the world's wealth, which is $93 trillion. So even though with a majority population, we've only got a third of the world's wealth, you might think, oh dear, that's not great. And yeah, there's room for improvement there, of course. But we have to keep some perspective around we're still relatively new to the workforce. History tells us women, we never used to work. We used to do all those gazillion things at home, but we didn't have a job. Now we do all those gazillion things at home and we have a job. So things have changed, but we haven't quite caught up with the wealth accumulation. So I think about it like this, actually. So I come from a place of supporting women entrepreneurs. That's kind of how my sort of path started. I started to fund women entrepreneurs in their businesses because they received such little venture capital money and angel investment money. So that's where I started, and then realized, well, there's no women investing into these women. And I thought, well, hang on a second, we've got $93 trillion. This is not pocket money. This is a lot of money. We need to mobilize this money because actually we have a lot of power within ourselves. So, I gave up sort of going out with my begging bowl, trying to get men in positions of, capital allocator positions, trying to get money for female entrepreneurs, and thought, well, hang on a second, I just need to educate and empower women to do something with their money, and we can solve a lot of these problems that we see in the world, like a lack of female health companies, mental health companies. The previous panel talked about that. These are things we can solve from within our own pool of resources. And I think that's an incredibly empowering thought. We have $93 trillion collectively. We can do something with that money ourselves without needing that begging bowl.
Are there enough angel investors that are women?
Absolutely not. No, there are very few female angel investors. I mean, angel investing, to be fair, is one of the riskiest asset classes. And we talk about women have less money. There's a gender pay gap. So, it makes absolute sense that we're not going, hey, let's just throw our money around into the riskiest asset class, especially if we're not, experienced investors. You must start in a more conservative way than, diving straight into angel investing. But ultimately, we want to get women into a position where their financial foundations are in place, financial management is under control, confident, and saying, you know what, I've got all of this under control. I'm ready to now start growing my money, not just saving and squirreling it away, because that's not going to grow into anything. It's going to depreciate. So, looking at growing your money. So angel investing, yes, can be one of those ways, probably, after you've mastered a few other different of the less riskier asset classes.
Are you seeing women on your platform? Are they more reservist averse, Kylin?
Yeah, I think from our platform perspective, I think it's generally across the same with a lot of investing platform. For us in Singapore and Malaysia, in Singapore we do see 80% to 20%, 80% male, 20%. Surprisingly, in Malaysia, the percentage is actually slightly more positive. It's actually 70% male, 30% woman. And I think that's across all, as in the stats are all quite consistent, right? But I do think that it's definitely improving. And like I mentioned, even my own personal journey, I only did do a little bit more after investing my own company on other external investment the last few years. I think it's very important that, I think if there's one thing all of us should take out of this panel, is that I think for me is start sharing, getting tips from your friends, start talking about a bit more so that we can get a bit more comfortable about talking about managing finances. Because I do think that among girlfriends was still pretty taboo. Well, it's a fairly common topic among men. And then second is that I feel like a lot of, I think our own mentality is that self-doubt, imposter syndrome, we're insufficient. I do think that it applies to a lot of other life choices, that other topics in life, that there's no right or wrong. And it's about building that confidence, feeling comfortable with what you do. And hopefully over time, we do see the percentage shift slightly in the more positive direction going forward.
I just want to add on that it's all about building that financial confidence, right? Find a banker, find someone that you trust that can help you to build a diversified portfolio and help to handhold you and navigate through the market and go through with you different stages in your life. I think if you could find that someone, I think you could then build your financial confidence along the way.
So there are a lot of statistics that show that women outlive men. And for this reason alone, it's really important, and it makes sense that we take control of our money, because he's gonna die before you, right? Or if you're gonna or if you're single, you might as well start, because who's gonna look after you? So why do you think women shy away from taking more control of our finances? Kylie.
I think a lot of the reason we have probably talked about just now, right? Personally, I would say that even for my own journey and amongst my friends, I think because we don't talk about it enough, and therefore we don't feel comfortable. So the imposter syndrome kick in, right? So it's like, oh, what if I make the wrong decision, or like I don't know what I'm doing, and therefore we do not want to take control of it, right? And rather rely on someone else, because like then you move the decision making out of your hand to someone, or whether it's your spouse, in your case,
Father.
your dad. But interesting enough, I think as the society progressed, right, as we talk about it more, I think things have changed. Even for my own personal experience, right, my mom and my dad are entrepreneurs themselves, but my dad still does all the investments, my mom don't. But interestingly enough, the last 5-6 years, my mom do come and talk to me about, oh, how should I start investing? And then I share, more. And it's a mini step, right, to actually taking control, right? And it's interesting, and it's not about like older generation teaching younger generation, or younger generation teaching older generation. It really depends on, I guess, the context of how you grow up with, right? In my parents' generation, they have no money to begin with, right? So they never really are taught about life skills in terms of like managing finances, allocation, diversification. What kind of tools can you use? But I think with the information flow, like what Tanya mentioned in terms of financial literacy, it has changed in a more positive way, right? Like I have never, 10 years ago, I would not expect my mom to come and talk to me to ask for tips on how to manage finances or investments. Yeah.
Tanya, what about women who are not in the position to talk about investing? The first thing about financial literacy, how do you reach low income women or girls? How do we start that conversation?
That's a good question. We've building a partnership with SMU and NUS actually. So we have some foundational courses, and I think that for everyone, whether you're 22, 32, 52, I think I wouldn't encourage anyone firstly to just start diving headfirst into investing courses, and start with your foundations. I put it into two buckets: managing what you have and growing what you have. Women are often really good at this managing part, and we're super busy here and we never get to this part. So for young, less wealthy women, or young women out of university, I think it's starting, at least for the younger ladies, starting to have some good financial habits, foundations, and starting with managing what you have really well will enable you potentially, depending on your job, your career choice, to start investing. If you're not going to be an investor, because of your means are never going to stretch, you can still manage what you have in a really efficient way, and make the most of what you do have, so you're not, hemorrhaging money where you shouldn't be. And some foundational courses are really good for that. Actually, I bumped into, I think she's over there, an SMU student who I interviewed last week for one of our courses on exactly this topic, young people and money. This is a passion of mine. And I can see we've got to close, but can I just say one thing on this is, you talk about young people. Cambridge University say that many of our money habits are formed by the age of 7. That's 7 years old. So if you have children, we should be talking to them about money rather than trying to undo bad habits as adults. Start when you're young.
Joy, and the rest of you, older women, what can they teach the younger generation about money? And what can the younger generation teach older women about managing finances, or simply the mindset?
I know we're really short of time, but there's one concept that I learned in 2019, and I just want to share with you. Put your money into three buckets, right? We talk about that. The first bucket is liquidity, cash that you set aside for the next 2 to 3 years, just to have enough cash. The second bucket is longevity, investment that gives you that retirement money so that you could fund your retirement lifestyle. I mean, when I retire, I still want to go for the holiday. I still want to come to Equirus Hotel and eat nice food, right? And then the third bucket is for the legacy. The money that you set aside, it can be for the children, it can be for philanthropy, it can be for your private equity. So this thing, I thought it was very powerful. If I've learned it long time ago, I wouldn't have wasted the tuition money. Now, on your part about what can the younger generation teach the older generation, I think is to teach them digital enablement. You don't have to wait until the next morning to talk to your banker. You could actually do that online, in the middle of the night. The next thing is to all this podcast, all this audio, UBS has a Circle One, all this download of information. You could actually listen at the comfort of your sofa couch. So what the younger generation can teach the older generation is to help them set it up. And after it's set it up, after it's onboarded, they just need to know how to do it, and they can do it. I think it's all about the ability of having that agility, that adaptability in the mindset, and giving that mindset about if others can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah, I think I can add a little bit on this, right? For older generation, I wouldn't say older, but I guess people with more experience, I do hope that you'll be able to share more of your investing mistakes or experience, especially mistakes, because I feel like people don't talk about the mistakes, right? But that's how we learn. With people who are less experienced in terms of investing, whereas I think generally people who are younger in age would able to actually share more in terms of technology tools that are available today. In the past, private equity, you can't have access to as low as 5 to 10K. Now you could. Whether is it the influx of robo-advisory and so on and so forth, right? All these tools are more new age stuff that we can share with the people who are more experienced. And I think there are definitely things that we can both learn and be better together from that, right? And I think one last thing I suppose that is across all, including just now I heard the mental health panel, is that we should definitely allocate time to ourselves, to building ourselves, and that include whether is it on mental health issues or is it on investing in our own wealth, right? So it's not something that you can wait and just down the road thing. Just do it now and start investing. We shouldn't be embarrassed that we are spending time and building ourselves. Because I think we perceive to be supposed to put others before us, whereas the opposite of men generally do not have that I guess pressure in the same way as how people view women's role in the society. So I think that's also important to break. I think we need to break out of this like typecast. Yeah.
Tanya?
I think the ladies have covered everything. The only thing I would say is just to go back to the point of the older generation is imparting knowledge or perhaps a lack of knowledge that they have, but educating themselves to educate the children. I think this is exactly where we will change the future for girls and for boys, but for all of us, education at a young age. I have a 5 and a 6-year-old, and they already know more financial concepts and understand more than I did at probably by the age of 25. It's possible.
Thank you so much, ladies. I shall not hold you up from lunch anymore. Thank you very much.